Hi Sagittarius, welcome to a video on 3 things that every Sag needs to know in 2021. It's Raina here, a fellow Sun in Sagittarius individual, and so this one I wanted to compile things that I don't typically talk about in my monthly forecasts. And these are ongoing things. It's not, some of these things didn't just happen for 2021 in 2021. They're ongoing, but it is worth repeating or even bringing up because people might be focused on other things. Now, the first one is something that a lot of you probably already are aware of, which is that the eclipse season is still in Sagittarius and Gemini. So in 2020, we had, how many was it? Like 3 eclipses in Sag? No, I'm sorry, 2 eclipses. A lunar eclipse in June, and then a solar eclipse in December, and then we had a lunar eclipse in Gemini. And eclipses, the pair of eclipses, the axis of eclipses occurs for about 2 years, 18 months, for the solar, what am I saying, not solar, for the transiting north node. I don't know why I said solar. The transiting nodes, which are connected to these eclipses. So that's why they are continuing in 2021. As we get to the end of the year, though, we're going to have a lunar eclipse in Taurus, and then we have a solar eclipse in Sag, and I believe that's the end of all of that, at the very end of 2021. Now, eclipses are times of change, and we can look at it, a solar eclipse is a powerful new moon, lunar eclipse, powerful full moon, but boiled down to one word, change. And when it's in your own sign, that means that on a very personal level, you're going to experience them. When there's a lunar eclipse, it means the sun is in the opposite sign. So it's forming that opposition. And that would mean the 7th house. And that has to do with your one-on-one relationships. And I would say especially of the marriage or committed partnership variety. So there are changes in both of these areas. Now, people get nervous sometimes when they hear the word change and they think it means that something is ending. No, not at all. It can actually be an improvement. It can be like if you have felt that you've been spinning your wheels and in your life, an eclipse might shake things up and move that energy and make things more likely to happen. I don't like to talk about that, though, in a very passive way of just saying that you don't do anything and these things just magically change. I think that we always have to, meet these astrological transits with some matching intention. And move in that direction. But I do feel that unlike a typical new moon, for instance, that the solar eclipse can bring in new things, but not necessarily that you have personally wanted or asked for. So in that sense, when they talk about eclipses being crisis points, that might be an example of that, where somebody gets a new experience, but they didn't ask for it, and there's a lot of kind of instability as things shift, very dramatically. But perhaps 6 months down the line, the person looks back and says, wow, that really turned out for my highest good. It was a little bit hectic there for a while, but it was something that was meant to be. I needed it to happen. A related thing that I didn't put down here, but I should mention, is that while this is happening, while the transiting north node is still in Gemini, that means the transiting south node is in our sun sign of Sag. And that can be a very interesting experience because, the transiting south node is our karmic past. I think people tend to overblow the south node, as is typical for a lot of things, like talking about Saturn and Pluto and things like that, where they focus on negative things and even exaggerate the negativity or the challenge. And in the case of the South Node, you're talking about the road, the very familiar path that you have been on. And what this really is all about is, are you going to stay in your comfort zone, or are you going to embrace change? I think Sages are capable of embracing change because Sag is a mutable sign. And so change may be something that you find very refreshing. However, we have to look at the chart as a whole. For instance, I have Taurus rising, and I know that even though I can change a lot of superficial things, there's that backbone of the rising sign that really seems to anchor me in certain patterns. Repeated behaviors, things like that. And it's hard to break those patterns because it is a comfort zone. So there may be, you may feel that you're very changeable, but perhaps it's only in a particular area or superficially. And, when it comes down to major life changes, you might be quite leery of them. So I think that the only true advice you can ever give people regarding astrological predictions, information, is to be very conscious of, your life at all times. See what is transpiring. See if there's some kind of pattern. And I say this if you have things occurring that are unwanted and you're like, okay, why did this happen? If somebody, is rude to you, a stranger is rude to you, and maybe you have that twice in one day. Okay, what's going on inside of me that I'm attracting this? Not to blame yourself, but to just say, check in with yourself. Because it's very easy to believe that the world is against you if you have, several negative events happen in succession of a major variety. It's easy just to jump to those conclusions. And so nipping those things in the bud is very important, especially during eclipse season, where there may be a lot of changes to your basic life. Number 2, Neptune is in Pisces. This is not new, and I believe Neptune has been in Pisces since 2011, so I think it's been there for like 10 years or so, and is going to continue to be there until I think like 2025 or 26. So because it's such a slow-moving planet, it doesn't gain many degrees year by year. But now that we're so deep into this transit, we're at the 20-degree mark as I record this in February of 2021. So for those of us who are in the last 10 degrees of the decan, the 10-degree decanate of Sag, so that would be from about 19 to 29 degrees of Sagittarius. This is going to be especially influential for you, but also even in the second decanate of 9 or maybe 8 to 18 degrees, or 9 to 19, whatever, 10 to 20, those people as well, because the orb or the distance of degrees that it is considered a square, because that's what this aspect is a challenging aspect called a square, sometimes is quite generous, especially with these outer planets, I believe. So you might be thinking about 10 degrees. But as it gets closer, then perhaps the intensity of the influence the influence intensifies. So, for instance, I have my sun at 22 degrees of Sag. So this is really getting close to that. How will this manifest? Well, if you know your natal chart, you have to see where the sun is in your chart. When I'm referring to things about the first and the seventh house, I'm looking at it from the solar perspective. But when you look at your natal chart, it could be somewhere else. For instance, in my chart, my sun is in the eighth house, and I have Neptune in the fourth house. And so we can look at these areas, what is being triggered, what is being worked on, because the square as an irritation can bring something to the person's awareness that there's like that friction, but it can be actually dealt with. So again, talking about what is challenging, what is not challenging, this can certainly compel you to tackle some of the illusions in your life. Where do you tend to lie to yourself, to be in denial? That's one of the things that Neptune can suggest. Now, Neptune can also be about... before I continue that, I just want to correct myself, because I said something that was incorrect about my own chart. I think I said it was the fourth house for me, and actually it's the sixth house to the eighth house. And, a lot of astrologers use the unequal house system. So some houses, like for instance, my sixth house is very large. And so you can't do this in your head. You have to actually look at the chart itself and know like exactly where it is in your particular chart. And so in my particular case, if I'm looking at it from the fourth house perspective, how have I idealized childhood in a way that kind of overlooked some of the more painful or traumatic situations? Because the square is to the eighth house. The eighth house can be trauma, and the eighth house is also the metaphysical perspective. So there's potential for healing even with a square. We can't just say, okay, that's a square, that means it's not going to happen. But you have to be conscious of it in order for you to even know that it's on the radar. And the third thing is Chiron is making a trine from Aries. Now, I don't have the information up of what exact degree Chiron is at this moment. So I think the last time I checked, it might have been like 9 degrees of Aries. So this may be much more a thing for those who are early degree Sages, where it's, making a trine from your sun to Chiron. Chiron is a wounded healer. And so I was just talking about Neptune, the ruler of Pisces, and there's a Piscean kind of a connection to Chiron that can certainly, seem to manifest, whether it's talking about past life connections, certain pain that you carry from one life to the next, or if it's talking about the healer. Pisces is not just some kind of victim. Pisces can be a healer, and so can Chiron. But its wounds inform its ability to heal. And, it's very interesting when we talk about these things, because if somebody is still wounded, even if they have great intentions of healing others, their projections can get in the way or interfere with their ability to reach people in as pure a form as possible. And this can happen with people from different types of healing modalities. So it's very important that the person is aware of what is their stuff and what they are putting out there, and learning to cultivate a more objective point of view and, like attitude. But this can make it easier to heal, and also this may be something that encourages you to seek this out as the way that you serve others, perhaps professionally, Sag. So I hope that this resonated with you. I would say too that with the South Node in Sagittarius, this may trigger perhaps past lives where you were doing this type of work. Who knows? And this is time for you to step into that position once again. But now you have this added information that makes your alchemy even more powerful. Okay, that's what I have for you. I hope that you enjoyed this. If you would like a personal reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.